sometimes we need to take a second look at some of the mess that we made and realize that there may be gold in that. There may be the opportunity to see things and find things in the messes that we create in our own lives. And remember, God can make all things new.
Well, welcome to What to Say and How to Say It. Today, I'm with Kyle Hargrove, our licensed professional counselor. He's brilliant when it comes to all people things and cognitive behavioral therapy stuff, right? Y'all, cognitive, that's the word that means what's in your brain and happening there, cognition. And there's a lot going on. Some of it's useful, some of it's not. Today, we're going to sort through some of that, and we're going to talk about taking some of that mess from your life, because I don't know about you, but if you're like me, well, not just me. If you're okay, let's just be real. Everybody's got a mess.
Yep.
Everybody's got a mess. And my guess is that God wants to turn that mess into a message. So today we're going to talk about how to look at your past, the mess in your life, see the blessings in it, and look deeper than the surface disaster you're dealing with or that you dealt with, and find the gold that's there that you don't know exists. So, Kyle, this is not a new topic for you.
No, personally or professionally.
I'm so sorry, right? But me too.
Yeah. I mean, think about the, what do we call? We call ourselves hot messes, the train wrecks, the dumpster fires, all of the different descriptive terms that we come up with, excuse me, to define our catastrophic consequences to choices that we make sometimes. And I don't know about you, but I know when I'm in the midst of a difficult time, that I may spend, most people, get on the bus for less than an hour to get where they're going and less than an hour to get back. But man, when I get on the struggle bus, sometimes I tend to stay on it for a while.
I've set up tents and campfires and roasted marshmallows.
Yeah.
Invitations to my pity party. I mean, for real.
Yeah. But it's when we make choices that come back and bite us. I think that we probably the most see the damage and the carnage and some of the stuff that we end up carrying behind us, feeling guilty about it, feeling ashamed about it. Realizing that, that pile of rubble behind me. Yeah, I caused that. What do you do about it? I mean, you have to live with that stuff. Do you have to carry it with you everywhere you go to remind you, I don't do that again? It's kind of like, hey, Doc, it hurts when I do this. And Doc says, don't do that. That's, I got an MD to tell you that. But sometimes we need to take a second look at some of the mess that we made and realize that there may be gold in that. And I'm not talking about the shiny colored stuff that comes out of the rocks in Alaska, but there may be the opportunity to see things and find things in the messes that we create in our own lives. And remember, God can make all things new. He's a master at that. He's a master of taking what we see as the worst thing ever and creating something beautiful and wonderful out of it.
Yeah. And I think this is a little bit different than looking at, the stuff that's happened to us that we've been grateful for and mine the gold out of that. Like, I have a disability that keeps me from doing as much with my hands as I'd like to. And it really upset me about 20 years ago when I first started. It's a chronic tendonitis thing. So I got to really be careful about overdoing, because then I'm a mess for 3 or 4 weeks. So I initially hated that, but God showed me, look, if you could do everything, you would. So I'm like, let me hobble you a bit, sis, and help you see where we're going here. And if I'd have been wise enough to do that on my own, maybe it wouldn't happen. But that's different. I didn't choose that, right? It just happened to me. But there's plenty of things that, well, like you said, my own choices, our own choices, then facilitate garbage cleanup day being needed. but we don't even know that unless we're humble enough to look at it in the first place.
Right. And I wouldn't back myself into the corner of saying it has to be based on choices that I made.
True.
Because things can happen to us. Bad things happen to good people. Good people, based on no fault of their own, can sometimes find themselves in situations where there's damage done. There's a mess to clean up. And I think the smartest people and probably the bravest people are the ones that see that even before everything settles to the ground, and start looking for ways to sift through and pick up and discard and rebuild.
Mm-hmm.
I know of the organization Celebrate Recovery is very popular here in Texas, and they used to meet on a regular basis inside the church where my office was. And at times I would, if I had a break in my schedule, I would run down the hall to the sanctuary and I would sit in on their general assembly. And I heard them several times over a year or so talk about different topics. And regardless of the topic, I would hear the phrase, and remember, never waste a hurt. And I just kind of tucked that into my mind. And finally, one day I ran into the director of the program there in Fort Worth, where I was. And I said, what does that mean? And he said, oh, that's really simple. He said, every time we hurt, doesn't matter whether we hurt ourselves, we hurt somebody else, or somebody hurt us. Every time that there's a pain, that there's a problem, that there's an issue, there's something to be learned from it.
Mm-hmm.
We spend so much time turning into a track star and trying to outrun whatever the problem is or get away from it as fast as we can, that sometimes we miss value and we miss things in the midst of that hurt that we can take with us into the future in order to avoid being in that spot again, if anything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so true. And you look at, how we're avoidant of pain, I mean, just being honest, it's one of the reasons I exercise is because I'm trying to take care of my 20 year from now self, right? Because I don't want to be that girl that didn't. And unfortunately, that's one of those things you got to start yesterday with always. But you look at the choices that we make and the things that happen to us, those are always outcomes that how we sift through those really depends on our mindset, whether we have a growth mindset, Jesus mindset, if you will, or whether we have a blaming and life shouldn't be like this, a resistant growth mindset, because that's a thing.
Yeah. Well, remember, we were created in such a way that pain is a natural consequence of some type of damage, whether it's emotional pain or physical pain.
Or financial pain.
Yes.
Yeah, any of it. Well, that's emotional probably, but yeah.
We don't want to talk about that.
Okay.
But pain is not always an early warning system, but it's a warning system that our brain sends the rest of us to say something's wrong. Something has been damaged, something's been hurt. And so with my clients, often it's a matter of getting them to the point of saying, how would you feel about actually embracing your pain? We can identify it. We know what it is. We may know where it's coming from. Since it's a natural thing to feel that, why don't we embrace it and see why it hurts? Why don't we stick around with it? I don't want to stay there. We're not going to camp out there, but at least spend enough time discovering and understanding that pain and allowing yourself to feel it, that you know why. So you don't go there again, or you don't set yourself up by having too few boundaries or parameters to be hurt the same way again.
Well, and it's going to come out. Like if we don't deal with it, what you resist persists. So if I pretend like that's not there, I don't want to have those bad feelings. If I think about that, it makes me feel terrible. Well, guess what? 4 hours, 4 weeks, 4 years from now, if I haven't looked at that, that's going to come out sideways at somebody I love. And odds are good that I've already added to that because I haven't cleaned that out. I haven't looked at it. And I like your notion of, sitting with it and learning from it.
Yes.
Probably one of the most valuable things that I learned in my early Christian walk. I didn't like it when I learned it. But we were studying David, the story of David, and we were also reading Job. So on Sunday, I'd go in and I'd hear about Job. And then in women's Bible study, it was about David. And we're going through these, and they lined up perfectly, and it was about suffering. And I had this overwhelming awareness that, oh, God sent demons to torment Saul. Okay. And then Satan had to come to the Lord for permission to mess with Job.
Yeah.
So God is not impotent. He's omniscient. Yeah. He's not lacking in effectiveness or whatever. He's actually choosing stuff to be allowed in my life. I didn't like that because I thought, a good father would protect his children, and he does, but I don't know what he's protecting me of. And that's the thing, is I think I do. The good thing is that after I got through the part where I was angry about it, because I decided I was a better father for a moment, I wouldn't parent my children this way. But when I got that, when I understood, I realized there's learning here for me in everything that happens. And so I can trust God in that. And if I choose to look at that, and honestly, one of my most common prayers for anything is, help me be a quick learner. Help me be wise and not foolish and not stubborn or evil. Just, open my eyes to seeing what it is you want me to learn. Help me learn it quickly, because I don't enjoy suffering, right? I don't want to prolong this hot mess.
Mine's not so much help me learn it quickly. It's help me learn it once.
There's that. Yeah, for sure.
Yes. The first time.
Yes.
Because, it's like, I remember I posted a meme one time on Facebook. It's something like, I can't just make a mistake once. I have to, do it 5-6 times. It just seems to be something that I've a place that I've found myself numerous times in life. So, I think it's interesting that you mentioned David in this, because his life continued to bear the consequences of his choices long after God had forgiven him.
Yeah.
Natural consequences.
Yeah.
And sometimes we think that's not, we wonder why, I feel like we're being tortured. We think that everything has been taken care of, wrapped up in a nice little package and put to bed. And then later down the road, we continue to bear the consequences of bad choices that we make. Mm-hmm. And truthfully, sometimes we have done everything we can, at one point to make everything right, and to make sure that we don't find ourselves in that spot again. But there are forces outside of us that were also impacted by that choice that are sometimes forgotten or sometimes reemerge.
Yeah. Or just naturally gonna be there. Like if you spend your whole life as an alcoholic or a drug addict or financially irresponsible or whatever it is, and you decide, you wake up finally one day, right? You hit bottom and whatever happens and the blinders come off. Well, guess what? Your liver's still reaping the years of abuse, and so's your family. And it's not all just boom, everybody's happy, hunky-dory now, and we trust you. No, that takes years to repair emotionally, relationally, spiritually. You're fine with God, right? I mean, he forgave you before you even knew you sinned. But that, he doesn't just heal the outcome of that. We have to walk through that stuff. And it's not easy. And it's no different than your liver just suddenly being healed overnight because you decided you were done drinking. that doesn't happen that way. There's consequences, outcomes, if you will,
Yes,
to the choices we make.
that's absolutely true. And I think too, there are all kinds of stories, rags to riches stories, or overcoming stories, or rebuilding stories that people, uh, they write books, and we see articles and see them on the news and things about, how they took what was meant for bad and they turned it into good.
Mhm.
How they, the person that maybe you're describing right there, maybe they do struggle with that liver disease for the rest of their life, but in the meantime, they build a program, and they
Mhm.
learn to meet the needs of people who are struggling with the same things,
Yeah.
and they become Jesus with skin,
Yeah.
to these people. And it's invigorating to see, people who were on their last leg or down on their luck, or felt so bad about themselves because of the place that they found themselves, but to see that they catch that drift of humility,
Mhm.
and they catch that drift of exercising the reality that my power doesn't come from doing something that I can. It comes from overcoming something I
Yes.
thought I never would.
Yes.
You know,
That is true.
that's where my power comes from. It doesn't come from doing the same thing somebody else has done, or comparing myself or my accomplishments or what I have or do to anybody else. It comes from overcoming, in places where I thought I would never stand on my own 2 feet. Now I find myself running marathons
Mhm.
here, but not literally. But that's so it's so intoxicating, no pun intended, based on what we're talking about. But it really is. It's intoxicating. I want a part of that when I see it and hear it. And I was my wife wanted some raised beds so that we could grow some vegetables and some things like that. And the price of lumber is out the roof,
Mm.
insane. And I said, I'd love to do that, but it's really not in our budget. But let me see if I can find a way to make it happen. So I began watching little piles of rubble and trash around town that sometimes have the wooden pallets in it. And my son is always, he's a phenomenal woodworker. And he's always saying, I said, it'd be fun to make something out of pallet wood. Oh, pallet wood's a bunch of garbage. It's terrible. It's not good quality. You can't. I said, all right. So anyway, over a period of time, I learned that there were certain pallets that had better lumber than others, and certain pallets that only had 2 screws or 2 nails in the ends instead of like 55. And
Oh my.
with some work and with some patience, you can
Mhm.
get apart without breaking everything. So I did this and got the nails out of them. And over a period of time, I built up, a pile of lumber. It wasn't pretty, but I was able to make 6 really nice, I think they're nice, raised box planters, so that we have this 30-foot row of vegetables and things growing on the side of our house that we otherwise wouldn't have been able to have.
Mhm.
And when I'm done, I've got this pile of stubs and nubs and pieces of wood and sawdust and nails and screws and stuff, and the pieces that you can't use and the ones that didn't work out, and you just kind of sawed them off and threw them over to the side. And I'm thinking, there's that pile of unusable stuff that's
Mhm.
been cut off and thrown out, but from that, look at what was made. And that's
Mhm.
kind of what, that kind of inspires me too, because I've been through scenarios in my life where I have felt unusable based on where I found myself. I
Mhm.
felt unusable based on situations I found myself in. And I'm not saying that some things didn't have to get trimmed off and some things didn't have to get repaired, because they did.
Mhm.
And they still continue to. That
Sure.
type of maintenance and checkup stuff is still necessary in my life. But those situations kind of become the inspiration for what I do,
Mhm.
and the inspiration for what I put into the lives of the people that I invest in,
Mhm.
personally and professionally.
Well, it makes you a great therapist, a great counselor, because you understand where your people have been.
Yeah.
And you can't, I mean, there's scripture around that, that we've suffered these things so that we can help others, we can comfort others, bring God's comfort to them the same way that he brought it to us, the skin on experience. And man, oh man, I got a peach tree that I'm pruning right now. And every spring I prune this thing. And every time I prune it, I think of the Bible, because you get the good stuff pruned so that it produces more fruit. Mm-hmm. You get the bad stuff pruned off so that it doesn't produce any fruit. Bottom line, you're getting pruned. And it is a violent process to, crank on those shears and bust through the blade and sever. And then this year we're taking a chainsaw to this fruit tree and grafting healthier pieces, because part of the tree's sick. It's going to infect my whole yard if I don't get this thing taken down. It's a brutal pruning that we're doing. But you see that in marriages too, right? Yeah. And there's some brutal stuff that's got to stop, and brutal growth that we have to go through. And I can relate to your flower bed, man. I'm those pieces of wood. One of the reasons the Respect Dare, the first book I wrote, exists was because God drugged me kicking and screaming through about a 6-7 year very personalized course on how to be a respectful wife. I could do respect in business. I understood that. I didn't understand how that fit in relationship, in marriage. And I was bad at it. Like, seriously, my poor husband. And thank God we've been married over 30 years now. We got married in 91. And, we've, like you've said, you hang in there and it becomes part of your story. But if you'd have told me when we got married that I was going to be doing marriage coaching and marriage ministry in any way, shape, or form, I'd have thought you were nuts, because I thought I knew everything I needed to know. Boy, was I wrong. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And that pruning process is still going on. There is no way to be successful in any kind of relationship unless you're humble.
That's right. And you have to be willing. And again, being willing sometimes takes courage. Yeah. You have to be willing to know and know that pruning and sometimes almost being chopped down is necessary. Yeah. Wonderful counselor friend Rebecca Wilson in Fort Worth told me one time something I will never forget. And I think the pruning of your peach tree is a perfect example of this. She says, Kyle, sometimes God removes the who removes the do, reveal the who. Gotcha. I want to tell you what, I don't think I've ever seen a scenario where God removed the do from somebody that it wasn't very painful. Mm-hmm. And maybe it came as a surprise. But during the process of dealing with that and seeking, to learn from it, God revealed who they were a little clearer and turned that scenario and those situations into awesome things.
Yeah. Yeah. That is definitely a thing. And, being in ministry leadership for 17 years now, I've had people come and go, right? I've got a core group of people that have been with me for well over a decade. Wonderful, right? Solid. And then we've had people come and go. And I think there's only one of them that I'm 100% sure it was just Satan getting her, right? And there wasn't a space on the other side of that for her. But I know God's in charge of that. But you got to learn to hold everything loosely and allow God to do the pruning. Because some of those people, as much as I love them, they were not where we were supposed to be going. They were not what we were supposed to be about, or the way, or whatever, and if I'm going to be okay with this being his ministry, I got to let him do the pruning. And it's not fun, because I love the people I work with. And then sometimes, there's, because pruning happens with people, right? With other people. So, there's more than one of our folks that I've had conversation with, and we're all type A, wonderful people. And I've said to them, you're an awesome leader. This is one of the reasons I want you on my team. What I don't know is if you're a good follower, because you're going over there, we're over here, we're going over here. And if you want to come over here with us, awesome. But if you want to go over there, that might be your thing to go do. And we'll wish you well. And it's gut-wrenching stuff, man, because I'd like to think that I could just keep them all together and have them all with me all the time. And we'd all end up, like some Disney movie experience where everybody lived happily ever after or something. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's just not life,
Yeah.
Yeah. And you navigate through that stuff. I have a woman that used to work with us, and oh gosh, she got called into a different ministry. We love her to pieces. She could come back in a heartbeat if she wanted to. But she's a great testimonial because she and her husband were divorced for 10 years. So marriage was going over here. She went over there and they were got divorced. There was an affair. And then she came back and they got remarried. And now they're on the same thing. And the whole process that they went through is just incredible. But that's what God does, right? I mean, those doors with the Lord are always open. And will we be humble enough to walk through them? And I admire people so much that will let God use the mess that he has allowed in their life to become the message of his goodness, because that's what this is really all about. It's not us showing up and looking like we've got it all together, because that is not a thing. If any Christian is going to be really honest, you do not have it together. And that is not the point at all. There's one Jesus, he's got it together. The rest of us, we got our mess. Will we let him use that as a message? Will we keep turning to him and seeing him in it and let him be with us to walk through that? Will we be with others versus be performance-based and critical and discouraging? Or will we build people up and help them step into who he's made them to be? It's just
Preach.
I'm sorry. I did get going again, didn't I? Sorry. I get a little wound up.
I can't talk that. Yeah. No, that's good stuff. And really the only thing I could add to that, that possibly would make that journey a little more passable, is not dragging along into a possible recovery or rebuilding scenario, not continue to drag the guilt and the shame of wherever we've been and what we've done with us, because that's what I think really backs a lot of people up, and it really keeps them from being all that they could be and experiencing, something truly great, truly wonderful, because we just don't accept the full forgiveness of God. We just can't believe that he could or that he would. And I don't think it's necessarily something that we verbalize or that we think about it a lot. We just live that way.
Right. Yeah. Oh, and this to be true from doing couples work too. One of my favorite authors right now is this guy named Mark Golston, and he's a PhD psychiatrist, bestseller, hostage negotiator, trains all the people, 0 people killing themselves on his watch kind of thing. I mean, he's brilliant at what he does. One of the things I find just crazy interesting is that he always runs his first couples meetings the same way. He lets the first person dump all their things and say all their stuff and blah, 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 and that's why my spouse is bad. And lets the other person go blah, 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 the same thing. And then he says, okay, you got all that off your chest? Good, because none of that matters. He just like, none of this past stuff matters. And then when he moves forward with people, he helps them separate the garbage in the past. Yeah, okay, that happened. That's a separate thing from the thing you're in now. Like, and I do this with my own people, like, let's look at reality. Had a conversation with somebody recently where their spouse just said the meanest thing to them. And they went back and they said another mean thing. And I said, well, how'd you feel at that point? Well, I was really hoping, and, I was sad that, I was longing for it. And I'm like, no, you weren't. She's like, what do you mean? I said, you weren't, that that you weren't, no. What happened is you got flambéed. I mean, the guy took a fish fillet knife and skewered you, and your guts are open. And your response to his question was, yeah, well, yeah, I love you too, honey. Like, no, you don't. Not in that moment, you don't.
Then you don't know.
And what might be more true is, I want to love you right now. And right now, I don't. That might be more of what's true in that moment. That I don't remember exactly the question he asked her, so I'm kind of botching the story, but it was really just some thing that she ended up not telling the truth about in that moment, and left him with the impression of, I can continue to be verbally abusive to you because you just responded positively to me as if it was all okay. And so she lied. She didn't know she was lying at the time. She thought what she wanted was what was true at that moment, but really it wasn't. And so, navigating all of that, what's really this moment? Well, do you want to figure out if you need to mow the backyard today or tomorrow? Or do you want to talk about the 5 years of history of who's not done what with this particular task? I mean, what is, yeah. So anyway, a little bit of the frustration of dealing with people who aren't living in reality. Bring them in.
That's correct. Good topic.
Yeah, it is. It is. And then the neatest thing about it is there's so much hope there, because God turns all of our messes into his message if we'll be humble enough to allow him to do that.
Seize the day.
Seize the day. All right, Kyle, thanks again for being here. And if you want more information around all this stuff, pop on over to our website at greaterimpact.org. We have a free ebook for you called Stop Walking on Eggshells. And that might help you navigate some of the more difficult situations in your life. We don't want you to suffer longer than you got to, right? So let's turn and go a different way. Go on over to greaterimpact.org and you can learn more. Thanks for being here.
Awesome.